Welcome to the Beyond No Extreme Podcast, Episode 1. Is that the name of the podcast?
Yeah, that's very
Yeah, I
similar.
think. Yeah.
Beyond No Extremes, BAE, Bay. Yeah, we just have a way to spontaneously come up with these things. Just like, Beyond No Extreme is shorten it, you get like Bay. And in our bootcamp, me and my co-founder, business partner, Khan, and our teacher, Chen, it's KFC. So we got Bay and KFC going on. Yeah, like by accident, it has to be this way.
Yeah,
Like
it has to be.
the emergence of like pop culture and something like really deep profound, like Buddha Dharma always gets mixed whenever whatever I experience, it seems to always be like this. So this is no different.
We're just asking for freaking copyright trouble.
Oh, for real? Oh, you're trolling.
No.
So this is Tyler and that's Khan. So me and Khan started CC together about 2.5 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? I don't remember.
It's
2 years
actually
ago.
closer to 2 years ago. Yes,
2 years ago. Yeah. So he just randomly reached out to me when I was just having a good time in Miami, and then he presented to me like this really detailed like blueprint of like what I should do with my business, like one of his slides. And at first, I was just like, I think I'm just doing my thing. I'm not really that interested. Um, yeah, because like at first I thought you were a bot or something. No, I'm just kidding. I thought you kind of use a bot because you're so systematic. And then you kept emailing me a couple of times, and then I was just like, what do I have to lose? Let's just listen to what this guy has to say. Because like I actually liked him. Like back then when I met him in Taiwan, I was like, yeah, this kid could be Pasha, and he told me how he like did this strong determination. And the image I remember of Khan is like he's like who was like drooling.
Yeah.
He demonstrated me how like he was like so hardcore in his strong determination did that he was drooling. I was like, maybe this guy has some something going on here. So I didn't even drool when I was doing Goenka the other night.
Yeah,
Took a look.
yeah. The
Like,
story was like when I was 17, I just randomly flew to Taiwan with my parents, and I know Frank was in Taiwan, but I don't know which city he was in. But for whatever reason, like I flew there, and I see that Frank was back then like Instagram has a function of like tagging the location, so it has kind of like that neon light gym, and I click on that location, and it goes to Google Map, and it's like 5 kilometers away from 3 miles away from my hotel. Like, I'm in this fucking same city, bro. Like, what? And then we meet up, and yeah, the story about strong determination sitting was like, when I was 17, I started to practice pretty hard, and there was one time that I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna sit for 2 hours, like no matter what. But I could only make it to roughly 80 minutes, 90 minutes or something. But like my mouth was in a certain position, so I was like, do not move at all. So like the sun would just like slowly drip, and then my entire shirt would just soaked in saliva after the sit because I didn't move. It was so silly. It's kind of silly. Yeah.
So,
And I guess
after we started talking, I was just like, okay, let's work together because he gave a really good presentation, and then I think one of the things that drew me to Khan is like he really understood what I was doing. He really kind of understood what I was trying to do. Yeah, but then he like broke everything down in very systematic way. I was like, that's what I'm missing is like some kind of a structure to whatever it is that I was doing. And then he was like, Frank, be frank, just be frank, and I'll take care of like the logistics. I was like, yeah, why not? Yeah. And then I came up with the name CC in the bathroom because Khan was like trying to create a Telegram group. Was it Telegram back then, or was it?
Yeah, it was Telegram back then. Yeah,
it was Telegram. I was like, okay. He's like, what should we name this group? I was like, I don't know. I was just like urinating. I was like, what about Contemplative CrossFit? Because for me, it's always about fitness was such a big part of my journey, and for Tyler too. Tyler was also into powerlifting and bodybuilding. But if you've been following me, like fitness is like a major part of my journey. Even now, the way I relate like contemplative fitness with like physical fitness, how they're really one and the same thing. Just and then the fact that we are taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that from different traditions is sort of like the hallmark of at least initially how we approach the methodology. at least how I approached it. And of course, if I'm going to coach people, that's the only way I know. Right? I wasn't specifically tied down to a single tradition or lineage at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, getting a little bit from Goenka, getting a little bit from Daniel Ingram, a little bit from Sam Harris, a little bit from like Michael Taft, and here and there, just the whole terrain of like the pragmatic Dharma scene, But then of course we get into that later. Part of the training that we're doing right now is going beyond the limits of what the pragmatic Dharma, the modern Dharma non-duality circle have to offer. But we can get more spicy stuff later. But in the beginning, it was just like, I kind of just looked around and then just took like the juiciest part from each teacher, each corner of the modern non-duality pragmatic Dharma scene. And then it's kind of how an athlete is trying to build up. When you try to be a really powerful athlete, one way to go about it is just to engage in CrossFit, right? A little bit of like powerlifting, a little bit of bodybuilding, a little bit of like triathlon, a little bit of like plyometrics, shakes, vertical jumps here and there. So that was our goal initially. And Tyler here is one of our mentors right now. He's one of the 6.5 Anatta realizers in the last cohort. So in the process of going to that cohort, in the beginning there was only like 3 Anatta realizers, but then as the bootcamp progressed, there was like 2.5 more. And then we can get into what Anatta realization mean. That would be a whole different podcast. But basically, it's pretty much what most modern Dharma community considers to be like the end of the path, or like the holy grail of the path. We consider it only the beginning. And that in itself might already piss a lot of people off, but it's intriguing, isn't it? It's like, what we thought to be the end. It's of course you can say it's the end in a very specific axiom of development. But if you look at the bigger picture of the entire Buddha Dharma, it's actually just the starting conditioning, the base requirement for a lot of the tantric practices that we're doing right now. We practice right now, getting transmission. Tyler here is a firefighter.
Yes. Yeah. I've been doing that for coming up on 6 years now. Yeah.
Oh wow.
I'm from the US, specifically Honolulu. Yeah.
What were you doing before like firefighting?
Before that, my primary job was training people. Kind of like what Frank was saying. So I was doing online training. I was prepping bodybuilders for competition. So I was doing their diet and nutrition, and I was also prepping powerlifters for competitions, doing mostly their training. A lot of powerlifters hate dieting, so it was mostly training, and then if they wanted nutrition, I was doing that too. And then I had part-time jobs. Like I worked at like Vitamin Shop for, I want to say, like 3 years. I did some seasonal stuff like throwing luggage at hotels, things like that. Yeah, just whatever. I drove Uber for a little bit. And yeah. That was like right after I graduated college, and I was just like, I need to do something for more income. But yeah, I only did that for a little bit.
Yeah, Tyler's with his photography, right?
Yeah, I got into that. I never really did it as a job. I just liked doing it. I usually carry like a little camera on me wherever I go. But people liked my stuff enough, so like I got asked by friends to like do some weddings or whatever. Portraits.
You should be the official photographer when CC gets together and do a retreat. Yeah, he's got like when I look at people's picture, like just like one glance, I'm like, this guy's got the eye for it. Because the way
you can kind of tell, when you look at people's stuff.
Yeah, you can look at just how people frame their shots.
How they compose things.
Sense there.
Yeah. That means a lot. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So he's a really good representation of what CC is about. We encourage people to dabble into different fields. Connecting the dots between different fields. That's firefighting, bodybuilding, nutrition, or like photography. That all of our training is also about connecting the dots, see how a different corner of different extremes codependent rise to create this or that. That's a lot of our training is about that. Basically, we're trying to build a Renaissance man or a maestro here. Yeah, and Con here is like he's the fastest learner I've ever met in my whole life. Like he just he just like picks up everything and then he's like and then like he just like gets it. Yeah. So initially, Con like he's like, okay, I'm gonna just do everything Frank said. And then he popped. He was like, okay, now we're going to find some other things now, Frank. I was like, okay, let's go. So that's sort of evolved from like the first three cohorts to the fourth
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah, you want to
yeah,
talk about that process or? Um,
yeah.
she-
But yeah, like this podcast is led by initiatives by Taylor. Is a representative of a much bigger thing that
Mm,
we're trying to do in the CC, and we have a lot of things going on. A lot of people know about Frank's videos, and Frank's mentioning the bootcamp. So that's one of the things that we're doing. So this podcast will also be another initiative for us to share more of what's going on with CC and something
Publicly,
like that.
because
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of our content
yeah.
is
Because so
exclusive.
far the episodes have all been private. Yeah, just
Yeah,
internally released just for those initiated. Right. Yeah.
yep,
yeah.
Um,
There's basically three tiers to the podcast. Tyler is hosting one with Chen, our coach, like our coach, our main coach. Yeah, and that's only available to people within the XCC group,
mm,
which
yeah.
is the people from the last cohort. But right now
So
we just
yeah,
started first day. Today is the first day of the new
yeah.
cohort.
Shameless plug. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So the new cohort just started, and we have there's a PR for how many people we get gather in the group. Also, I'm very proud of this. We got more than one woman to join. Last
yeah,
cohort, Lori was the only female that's ever been in CC group, and this
yep.
time we had like I don't know,
Five
five
or
or six.
six something. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So I don't know why
Yep.
that is. I guess the majority of my viewers are still male, but I think that's changing a little bit here and there.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
trying to like balance out the energy a little bit, have a little
yeah.
bit more feminine energy. Because like one of the first things like Chen told me was like, Frank, you're being fucking too much. You need to get fucked more. Like, Frank, you need to get fucked more. Like physically,
Uh,
not just physically, metaphysically. He's like, you gotta be in more, right? You gotta be like, play the teamwork, do the teamwork thing more, and just like tap into your feminine side. And that's part of my training right now is to get fucked more instead of always my fucking. And I'm getting my fucked by like Chen and this whole bootcamp. I'm getting my fucked by both of you too on the constant basis. So.
yeah. Yeah. The introduction of more girls, I think, shows how like these boot camps. I wasn't there for the first three. No, I was there for the third.
First two.
Third or
Yeah.
fourth?
First two.
First, yeah. I wasn't there for the first two, but it seems like from what you guys have shared, these boot camps have changed quite a bit since their inception, and
Yep.
that's something we'll probably discuss in a little bit. But again, shameless plug. Uh, while these boot camps do serve as a sort of way for us to see who's a good fit for this approach to contemplative training, and
Mm.
really what we see as like as a lifestyle. Um, just as a standalone block of training, I think it's also a great way just to strengthen whatever your practice is. Besides the system that is being introduced in this training, which is intended to be a holistic system of contemplative training, not at all separate
Mm.
from life, just by committing to multiple group trainings and discussions per day, holding yourself accountable to participation just by showing up, you're not you're not just getting in the reps, which is like what we've been saying is like 80% of the battle, but you're also
Mm.
say uh, tending to the soil for the cultivation of a lot of merit. Um, yeah,
Yeah, right
That's
now
it.
our schedule is 7 a.m. is our first session, led by our coach Chen. He gives a live transmission, and then at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I have to rebroadcast that to the people in different time zones. And then Con here is going to rebroadcast that, or the initial transmission is going to be rebroadcast like twice,
Two
right?
times. Yeah.
Two times, yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
So basically, we have an hour of sit. Today's session went for an hour and a half, and then we have
yeah.
around 30 minutes, sometimes an hour of discussion. So
Mm.
basically, for 4 hours a day, I'm training with cohorts, and I'm participating in the discussion. And on top of that, I'm doing this podcast, and I'm editing my videos still for like 3 to 5 hours a day. So I'm just like working full time on this. And that's another thing. It's like we really encourage our participants to increase our capacity in all areas of life, even
Yep.
like physically. Yeah. Um,
Yep.
and I think, yeah, Con, you want to talk a little bit about how you got really interested in the book. What's that book called? The Shoe Dog. Yeah, because when Tyler mentioned lifestyle, I was like, that's a really good word. It's like this CT thing here, what we're doing, it's a lifestyle. This contemplative CrossFit thing. It's a lifestyle, right? Just like Nike. Nike is not just a product. Chen also say he really likes Nike too because it's not just a product. It extends far more than just the shoe itself. It extends to a state of mind, certain aesthetics. Like if you like Nike, it's like 24/7. You're just representing that mindset, right? And if you look at the Nike logo, the creator of Nike, Phil Heath. Is it Phil Heath? No, Phil Knight. He said he was actually looking for enlightenment at one point. He wanted to create like a state of unity for whoever wears his product. But like Steve Jobs, he went to look for enlightenment, but instead he put like his like enlightenment quality in the Nike.
iPhone, yeah.
The iPhone for Steve Jobs, and then for Phil Knight it was Nike, and then he said the inspiration for the Nike logo is actually a footprint. It's someone that runs so fast, like just leaves a really fleeting and transient footprint. Right? It's not even a footprint. Yeah. And then the Tathagata, which is the name that the Buddha chose to call himself, in the beginning, we're not supposed to depict the Buddha at all, right? All the statues of Buddhas we see nowadays, that came like way later. In the beginning, you can't depict the Buddha. But this people are still trying to depict it. What are you going to depict? The footprint. It's just like a bird, right? A bird that's like flew across the sky that leaves no trace. Right, but we have to depict something. Let's depict a footprint that was just like in the sort of in the moment of arising and passing simultaneously. That's when we're going to capture the essence of a Tathagata, that which is really gone but not yet arrived, or coming and going, happening at the same time, or beyond coming and going, however you want to call it. So Kansa, he really likes the book Shoe Dog, which is written by Phil Knight, and that inspired him to sort of build CC.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's one of the book I really admired, and it's also, if we read that book, it also shows how actually challenging it is to build to bring into life like an idea like this, because well, maybe this is just like circle jerking, but I do think that what we're doing here is beyond a lot of the usual scope of just like making money or like just trying to get our name out there, trying to build status, trying to build following. Because one of the things that I think we share similar of people who's building this show, running this organization, is that we don't have to do it. Actually, is that we don't really have to do any of this. Frank doesn't have to accept my offering. I don't have to commit to Frank in that way. I have other clients at the time. I have other projects going on. I even have a different lineage going on at the time, but then I drop it to follow Frank wholeheartedly. And then even now, Mei Chang, our head teacher, a lot of that, he doesn't have to commit to us, but yet he chooses. And then a lot of like Taylor doesn't have to step up and do the podcast, but yet he's doing it. So a lot of this is willingly participating in a grander vision.
In a greater cause.
Yeah, in a greater cause, in switching the team of like stepping into that kind of big vehicle. Big boys playing big vehicles.
Big Bodhisattva vehicle is just being a solo realizer, doing your own show. Now it's about like, the wellness of the cosmos, or for the sake of all sentient beings, and so on and so on.
This is really contrary to my status quo of being as you guys saw when I first joined. I very easily can just sit in the back and chime in here and there and just absorb, but but being in front of everyone talking is just not my my go-to maneuvers.
In the beginning when Tyler first joined, Khan was like, I think this guy like realized Anatta, what the fuck is he doing here? He was just always like lurking in the back, and then show me some of the stuff that Tyler wrote. I was like, oh, this guy, he at least he went on ATR a lot.
I did go on ATR a lot. I entered CC at a kind of interesting time for me. Up until then, I had been frequenting, some online communities, ATR, whatnot, reading whatever text you could find, that's accessible to us modern internet Dharma practitioners. And when I came to CC, in hindsight, I can say my yogic capacity was more developed than my philosophical scaffolding for it to be expressed through. And I think that was part of what also made it challenging for sharing a lot of things. You know, it seems like people's personal experience of how recognition unfolds varies greatly, right? And I remember actually watching your Big Bang video, Frank. And funny enough, when that realization dawned for me, it was in referencing to your video that I then questioned myself, because it was like there was so much energy there for you, and it seemed so mind blowing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was like, this is beautiful, this is captivating. You know, talking about the realization, the recognition, interesting beyond interesting, but it also seemed so obvious, and so right in front of me, and so underwhelming, you know. And then contrasting that to your video, that actually contributed to me making my way to you guys, because it already felt like, yeah, this seems like what's being talked about in all this stuff that I'm reading online and in books and whatnot. But was just this incessant, this can't be complete. There's more to go here. And so following that, following my intuition there, led me to seek out a genuine community beyond, you know, the likes of internet forums and Facebook groups, and hopefully a teacher, you know. And here, yeah.
Yeah, well, Khan, why don't you talk about your shift? Yeah, this is the thing about Anatta realization. It's like it manifests very differently for everyone, and for some people it's like bliss, or you get a honeymoon phase for like 2 years, and then they might sink into a dark night afterwards. Who knows? But for like Tyler, for example, it's just like a recognition, right? There, you said there was some bliss there too, right? There was some energy that
Yeah. Like there was some energetic stuff for about a month, um, but it you know, just
you were like for like 2 years.
yeah, and like started watching more of your videos after that, I was like, I'm not feeling it like this guy is. So yeah,
Yeah.
but the
I
recognition
have yeah
itself, it was like almost just like
yeah
that.
I had a
Oh, it's also
suspicion,
obvious.
and
Yeah.
yeah
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah I had a suspicion about this, but it may be a bit too spicy to share directly publicly. So, but let me know how you guys think, and hopefully we
Okay,
can edit.
we can always cut it.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
always
or we
We
can
edit
can
it.
cut it.
say whatever we want
I
here. We'll
yeah,
just like
but
talk about
I
it.
do yeah. I do think that post Anatta, that kind of shift, there is something that's coming at it, and there's something coming post it, like after it. And I that post Anatta, like that kind of subsequent months, there are many signs, even if we're unaware of it, for what is necessary to happen for a greater trajectory to be there. So I do believe there is a requirement, given the nature of our karma, to go through certain things. For
Mm.
example, I see that for my shift, very quickly after that was like straight into Vajrayana, of like, let's fucking go, like fine, like boom, 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 boom. It almost immediately after it, it was like started picking up books, started to reading this, reading that, and completely um, recontextualize my understanding of the relationship of teacher students and how we need to go through it. And from my understanding, immediately after Frank's shift, there was a bombastic showmanship that is
Yeah, that was
required.
me looking through my particular trajectory of karmas.
Yeah. So it is not just like working through in regarding to like dissolving, and then after that like you're cool with it, or blah, blah, blah. But it was actually like that's the most critical moment to plant new seeds. So by you going and expressing and making those kind of videos, making Big Bang, now it creates a ripple effect that people can trace back and see that, oh, the show starts there.
And then there's more to go.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there's more to go.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
then it's immediately making it a very interesting. It's almost that it's such an interesting flip, because prior to like Frank's Big Bang video, it's almost like he had an entire career as like a filmmaker, an artist, like a communicator of his own art. But then after that, the show takes on like an entire different scope of like stake, right? It's now we're talking about like the alignment or like the awakening. It's a much bigger scope. So that pulls all the people previously to a new scope, but also people who's so used to like these sanitized spiritual communities everything is nice, not too bombastic, it's very calm. Come here and then look back. It's like, what the fuck? How can he come here to how can he arrive here from where he was? So that's a very interesting kind of maneuver. So looking in that way, I think if a person generally go through anatta, then there will be very much signs if he can pay attention to point him to the next set of trajectory. But he has to open to it, because I do think that there's also people that open to anatta, or whether that anatta or not, I guess that that's for a deeper investigation and a deeper examination of that person. But yeah, I think from all the people that I see and know who have realized anatta and talk to, it seems that around the time that they have the realization is a very kind of ripening of their karma. So just by that point, then we can see into the longer trajectory of that karma. So it's like a perfect cycle of like a macro and a micro, and then a bigger, much bigger macro.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, that's very
for
interesting.
us that don't really know what anatta is, we're not going to get too much into what that is, but it's pretty much, if you're familiar with Daniel Ingram's map, it's NCTB fourth path is what we call anatta. Yeah, I guess let's talk about how like how Tyler got there. Like you said, you I think I asked you one time. You said that you practice. You said you went from I amness, which is recognizing unbounded consciousness. That's usually like a phase before anatta, which can last for like years, or maybe some people like spend their entire life in the I amness phase. I think Angel calls it the first shift, right? He calls it unbounded consciousness. But even during the I amness, there's still a little bit of like a seer here, perceiving the I amness, or like a seer here. There's still a solidity here, like a certain sense of a person here that's perceiving the God mind, the unboundedness, so to speak. So, and the further dissolution of that would completely dissolve the subject object, but at least in the perceptual aggregate. Yeah. So
Cool.
how did you?
Yeah,
How you
it's interesting because since joining CC, and taking what I've learned here with you guys, and especially in this new phase of training that's been ongoing ever since we met Cheng, it's helped me to, retroactively recontextualize how things unfolded for me. And I think I had an initial, at least glimpse, if not, breakthrough into that phase that you're talking about in, I want to say 2017, after like one of my first ever psychedelic experiences. And like it was like right after that shift just like stuck. Um, and from there was kind of like an intuitive development of, I wasn't looking into developing a meditative practice or anything like that. I was just kind of following an intuition. And I started doing what I later learned was body scanning and self inquiry, but it kind of just happened. I don't want to say on its own, right? Because there are a whole lot of other um, things, causes and conditionings, right? But it was developing without like a direct, you could say there was a seeking, right? But it wasn't like most people are like they're seeking within the context of some sort of dharma, or whether it's
like
um,
follow a specific type of method, this path.
yeah yeah
Your path is very feminine. Like I think a lot of girls follow that kind of path. It's like more like receptive and just going with the intuition.
yeah.
And a lot of
So
guys are very masculine. It's like, okay, I gotta sit this amount, go to that retreat for like this money amount
yeah,
of time.
like I didn't do any retreats,
I gotta
and
break loose into the jhanas after jhanas after jhana. That kind of like very masculine. You didn't have that, huh?
no, yeah, I didn't do any retreats. I didn't, but I mean, I was, in hindsight, body scanning all day, every day, every moment that I could do it. I didn't realize I was doing what it felt like. I was linking it to sort of my fitness practice, in that, I think through bodybuilding and powerlifting and just having injuries, eventually, trying like you get injured and you try to work around it, and when you're feeling into your body, yeah, maybe you want it to move a certain way, or you plateau on a lift, and if you're like analyzing your biomechanics and whatnot, you realize like, okay, oh, I'm stuck in certain planes, or I'm stuck like I can't. Why can't my why don't I have this much, I don't know, movement at this joint, or like I don't feel anything in this area, unless in my body, and then so it was kind of through fitness that I and wanting to continue to progress in my fitness that I started doing that. Yeah, actually, no, I was already sort of doing that before, but it was like fitness focused, even before any psychedelic experiences or whatnot. And so then I think maybe that leading into those experiences, there was already sort of like a foundation there of just yogic investigation. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty interesting. Yeah, because I think the
Yeah.
way you talk in the discussion today, you're saying like we're not trying to figure out whether is the snake real or not. Like the analogy of like recognizing the snake has always been a rope. That's one of the analogy for the recognition. It's like what you thought to be a snake has always been a rope. Like what you thought
Mm,
the self or like the fabrication of the self has always been like just sensation. It's just a thought. And of course, you also deconstruct nature of that
mm.
thought and so on. So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
like looking at the bigger picture instead of like, oh, this specific instruction, that particular method, you're trying to understand the what gives rise to meaning itself instead of
Mm,
trying to figure out what this means with other meanings and so on, right? And
mm.
that's sort of the trajectory of CC. I mean, it's sort of the
Exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Because and we'll probably get more into it, but like, so after that big shift for me, that's when I really started looking into like, okay, um, my life was already kind of situated in a way where situated, and I already kind of had that disposition towards doing these things. But now it was like, okay, there's a direct focus on it. There's a direct like this. I'm going to revolve my life around this, investigating this, whatever. And then so I started reading more Dharma specific texts and techniques and whatnot. And even even then, it's like there's now we can see how like those techniques and even the systems kind of built up around just like there's systems built up around techniques rather than a system.
instead of the other way around.
Right, rather than a system that incorporates techniques, which is
Yeah,
what CC is doing,
yeah,
you know. um,
yeah. It can be really daunting for a lot of people because they're so used to instructions or like very specific
mm,
techniques or like
yeah.
guiding meditation step by step. But then they were coming here and they hear Chen's instruction, they're like, "What the fuck's going on?"
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's what I was trying to speak to at the end
Yeah,
of the training session today. Is exactly seeing how a snake or a rope is created,
yeah.
rather than making sense of if it's how we make sense of if it's a rope or a
Rather
snake.
than rather they try to make
Yeah,
sense if it's a rope or a snake, you try to
yeah,
make sense how our mind even construct a rope to be a snake, and then how our mind even construct a rope.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
go even
Exactly.
deeper and tap into the deep structure of experience.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, Khan said he told me like he had the I amness experience like when he was like 17. Like I didn't get
yeah.
into like I didn't know what I amness was until like 5 years after I started meditating or more. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I don't.
different sun
Yeah.
condition and the way they manifest realization and what comes after is very, very different. And the way they approach the methodology. So that's very different.
Yes, sir. Yes, from my experience, that like at 17, it was actually by the time that I met you in person, it was actually post that experience already. So
That's
that's why
crazy.
like
I
I was
didn't even have that experience yet. I was like, hey, this guy is a real master.
because like all of all of the like the gung ho, the kind of like attitude, well, let's go, let's do determination, sitting on that. It goes after that I see that, oh, this is real, like it's realer than real,
Yeah.
and there's fundamentally change. It was so interesting because um, I don't know, but like as own kids that go through high school, there's a lot of pressure of like socialization, fitting in, and that kind of sense. And I'm also like away from my family for my high school, so it was like a prolonged retreat kind of setting of like I'm just here, mostly by myself. and very, very like cooked up by the situation around me. And yeah, there was a series of like at that time I was clinging a lot to like sex and like womanizing, just like constantly chatting with girls and want to strike up as many like potential relationships as possible, just so I can distract myself from like this incessant existential pressure. I just don't like whenever I'm alone by that time. It was almost like it's immediately someone is like choking me, suffocating all the time. So that's happening for like 2.5 years something. Prior to there was a moment of I have nobody by my side, and all the girls that I've been talking to just ghosted me entirely in one day. Everyone, including my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, I'm really fucking angry. I'm so angry. I'm so fucking angry. But it was just like, let's just stay with it. Let's just stay with this anger and see what it's about. Let's just stay with the frustration. And then I was seeing like, oh, I'm angry at the world. I'm angry with everybody around me. Like, look at that motherfucker. What is that that you have to have? What is that that you have that I don't have? Is that make you so happy and I'm so miserable? And then we're just seeing the tension of stranger and I'm here and they self and other, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just seeing like that entire observation process was happening in somewhere. And I just see that, oh, I don't need to get caught up in the content of that thought. I can just be. Like I can just be in the entirety motion of everything that's happening. And right after that, like all the anger just go, like I remember it just go shoot up and like so much energy for like 2 weeks after that. And then I copy Frank, like strip just in my underwear and go into like a supermarket. I still have that video online. And
well, that was after like, the I am this experience.
Yeah, that was like a week after the I am experience. And like I was starting to like crash out, like going into argument with like standing up in the class and like fighting back the teacher and like you don't understand how to teach a student and like just complete reckless behavior, just like feeling I'm invincible. But there's also like a lot of like visions about how like there was a sense of purification. There was a sense of I remember visions started to come to me. I didn't really know how to make sense of it, but there was about like how that fundamentally the vessel, this energetic body structure, if it's returned to its most pristine state, then whatever is inside will just naturally shine through.
The natty state.
Yeah, but I remember there's the vision of a vase. So then when it's empty through, then the vase, the air inside and outside will just be completely indistinguishable. But we still have a vase. We still have our body. That's the difference. Like we still have a limitation somehow. But if we look at the opening of that vase, then it's just completely interconnected. We can't say the vase is like the air inside, the life of that vase is outside of the air around it. But then I see that how that I'm purifying it. But after a while, I don't have any technique. I don't have any kind of methodology going on. So the energy just ceases, and then I go into seeking. I'm like, okay, so now let's just sit and like try and recreate that experience.
So for you, yeah, like it wasn't locked in at first. The I amness for you.
I would say that it's locked in the way of like I understand that there's a possibility of going beyond my thought, and I understand that as an insight. But in regarding to like stability of composure, like how and when we train, we have a lot of like yogic stability. No, it's not the case at all. It was
because like yogic training back then, yeah.
Yeah, I have zero yogic training. It was just like instantaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an instantaneous kind of popping into it, and I have no idea what was going on. So then I met you, and then it was like, okay, so this is a training, and like I guess I can do. So that's where I was like looking into like to join a Wanka to try to see like, okay, let's. And I would say like even when I do the 10 days Wanka after that, and a lot of it, try different stuff like some Vedantic tradition, some New Age, this and that kind of thing. But it's not until that I joined Clear Vision in 2023. But also is prior to that, it was a lot of lifestyle stuff about like how do I align my life completely around the practice, like career decision, all of that have to align with this like desire. And it was very daunting because I was fairly young back then. So I don't know how that I've kind of make a living out of this, or like, is it even possible to pursue this kind of interest? There's nobody around me really that have this kind of understanding. So very isolated, very alienated from my own people. But yeah, so it's just back to back betting on betting on betting, like going on in again and again. Just like how I'm shooting my shot with the presentation I sent to you. It was like an example of like the kind of strategies that I've been using. Just like, let's go all in. Let's just risk everything again and again. But it's not until that I set aside a quite amount of money to go to Australia, enjoy like an entire lineage of Western esoteric, that I like, oh, there's a massive difference when I'm training with a lineage. I didn't understand the word lineage at the time, but it was like, it was a school. It was a school with a principle, with its principle, with its lineage, with its roots, with its mythology, with its law, and like the greater power and all that coming in. And I could see the difference because it was, number one, just on like the yogic penetration into conditioning. It was a massive breakthrough, like to the degree that I don't ever come across something like that. I haven't ever come across something like that. It was so healing. But of course, after that, there's kind of like the 3 months of blissed out, like, wow, after that. But because it was so radical, and it opened me up to so many new perspectives like that. And after that, when I started to meditate again, that was when like CC started for the first cohort. I started to hit cessations. I'm like, oh, I can do it now. Like there was enough.
I didn't know you had cessation. You said you had cessation. You didn't tell me until like very much later on.
Yeah. Because I was afraid that you're gonna like, that's not cessation. I was like, I couldn't take that.
Dude, like, if you feel that to me, if anybody comes to me with like sensations, like I'll be like, good job. But then back then, that was those are days when I was like, verifying sensation. It's like, okay, this guy doesn't have a sensation. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on. It's like, because coming across Neil Ingram's work, and that's one method. But then we can talk about the replication of that. But to me right now, cessation isn't like the holy grail of your practice anymore. I mean, sure, like it's a really good benchmark, but it's not like the end all of practice or anything like that. But there's a couple of things you said there that's really interesting. First is after you sort of have the initial glimpse into like I amness or presence or unbounded consciousness, you went through a phase where you said you became even more cocky in a sense, like a lot more confident in a way, right? But reckless, right?
Reckless, very reckless.
Yeah, usually that happens a lot, and I see a lot of people in the spiritual communities nowadays, like they will have initial glimpse or maybe even a pretty stabilized I amness going on, but then you look at the behavior, they're like kind of like a little bit I don't know what the fuck's going on, like why are they acting that way?
It's a new money syndrome. It's like the contrast is so much that you have to flex it.
Yeah, kind of. That's one way to look at it. It's just like a lot of people would kind of reify the I amness into a god or whatever, right? That they would, the rest of the identity would cling on to or reify that embodied consciousness into like, I'm God or whatever. Or even psychedelic experiences can do that to you too. I think another reason is because after the I amness realization is when a lot of your conditions come out. Right, because like, why did you have an I amness recognition in the first place? Because a large portion, a large chunk of your conditioning has been like dissolved, at least temporarily, if not permanently. But then, what about the rest of your conditioning? They become extremely exposed, right? But when a part of your condition is still getting dissolved, another part of your conditioning is trying to like verify that experience or verify whatever the realization is. Then it could be really messy, so to speak. Yeah, and I think a lot of teachers also you see a lot of abuse, right, happening in the spiritual community. I think a lot of that is going on as well. It's like maybe not a complete realization, but there's some clinging to a reification to that realization into a new identity, so to speak. And then I see that happening in my own journey as well. And another thing that was interesting that you said was that you found out very early on that lineage is very important, or like training with a Sangha or like a group is very important, right? And I didn't realize that until very, very recently, of the importance of even a lineage, or even if not a lineage, it's just training as a Sangha, as a group.
Yeah, I guess I was very lucky because, like, I remember, um, well, first of all, I think that if we're speaking about like the greater communities of practitioners out there, and like Frank was mentioning, like a lot of times when we go through shifts, there's a sense of like a recklessness that comes from it, or like a premature abandoning of the path. Like, oh,
Yeah.
so
It's over.
I
It's
mean,
done.
like,
Every shift can be like every shift feels like the end, right? A little bit.
yeah, yeah.
At least in
So
the
that is
beginning.
very
Yeah,
interesting.
that's because
Yeah,
Yeah.
every shift. The reason why it's a shift because you reach the limit of your
Yeah.
current level of
yeah,
consciousness or current level of understanding. So of course it's gonna feel like the end, right? But then
yeah.
that can be some trap, yeah.
Yeah. So then it's actually become, I guess, from my perspective, it actually then become a more fitting analogy would be more like Sisyphus, just constantly training. It's never ending. It's like as long as you have an embodiment of a human incarnation like this, you got to practice, and the path continues in the kind of in that perspective. But yes, of course, we can say that something has been accomplished, sure, but
Something definitely, but
yeah, yeah. But then
you,
you still have your
yeah,
karma, you still have your situation, you still have your destiny, your trajectory, and everything like that. So then it depends on you what you do with such conditions.
you still want to live
Yeah,
a good life, you know.
yeah.
Like for
Because
Khan, he still wants to have a good married life, you know.
yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
like I was also want to mention about like when I said about like going on in or that kind of like bets that I make on myself,
Doesn't mean
it
you
was
don't
very
become, yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't
it
mean that
was
you
very
go.
difficult because it was not just like abandoning everything. It was about how do I balance this need or like this journey to pursue awakening to see the bigger picture, and also I want to make my parents happy. Because it's a very complicated dynamic about like because my parents have a very specific expectation, or my girlfriend at Sam has very very specific concerns about me going down this path, and I know I have to go. So how do I reconcile this? So now it's become like a skillful relationship
Yeah, I
issue.
think Albert said something really interesting. He said the reason why you need like coaches or a sangha is because up to a certain point you just can't generate enough power
Yeah.
to dissolve the rest of your conditioning or to access a certain yogic state. You need like assisted rap, so to speak.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I said in my last video. You can probably realize like I am this by yourself, or even Anatta by yourself. But then if you're going for like completion, which we can talk about what that means maybe in a future episode, then you probably need like your mind stream needs to be connected to tens and hundreds or even thousands of sources or what we call lineages, whatever, to receive direct transmissions. So you get
Yeah.
you get help, you get assisted raps from like Buddhas and Bodhisattvas,
Yes,
things
sir.
like
Yeah.
that. There's another thing
Yeah.
that you said that was really interesting is which is I want to contrast your path with Taylor's is like it's almost like your drive for realization is an existential angst, right? Or maybe even
Mm.
say suffering.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
It's usually very much like that because like
oh,
after so
yeah.
yeah, very much like that. Yeah, it's usually like some sort of loneliness, some sort of like pressure, some sort of like a push from life to like go a certain direction, and if I resist, it's just gonna crush me. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Because for me, it was always about like aesthetics or transcendence. But of course, trying to get rid of suffering is also part of it. But the main purpose for me was always like transcendence. How do you get to the next level? Whether that's like vertical jumping or getting stronger or whatever. But then,
Mm.
well, what about you, Tyler? Like, what made you want to like even
Mm,
do? It didn't seem like you were like suffering like intensively, right? It seems like the way you.
yeah, no, not like, I wouldn't say I was, I wouldn't say I wasn't, but I wouldn't say that it was,
It's not desperate enough. Right?
excessive.
You don't wanna
Yeah,
do
it wasn't like excessive. Um, I don't know. It always just felt like there was this trying to talking about meaning making and sense making, but this trying to make sense of what's going on. Really, that
Mm.
was it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this whole
And yeah,
philosophical training is like right. It's like your cup of tea.
it's what interests me. Yeah, it's probably what interests me. At least before this, probably what interested me the most. Even though I wouldn't say like I did a whole lot of traditional studying in it, or yeah, yeah. Um, and I wouldn't say
Just
I
like figuring out
understood.
trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. Right?
Yeah, yeah, just yeah, yeah. I enjoyed philosophy. I enjoyed the spirit of debate and playing devil's advocate for the sake of, just not arguing, but the fun of it.
Or is you like contemplating things and trying to
Yeah,
get into
yeah,
the root?
yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that we do in CC is we have a book club. Yeah, we have 2 book clubs actually. We're reading the works of great masters, and they're trying to teach us how to read philosophical or non-dual philosophical text from guys like Nagarjuna or the Third Kamapa, and then read it in a way where it can't describe it as reading with your third eye, where you're not just reading with your conceptual mind. You're actually, of course, that's also part of it, but then you're reading with your entire being, so to speak, your entire body, in order to receive the transmission directly. That's one way that we try to learn how to receive transmissions. And a lot of people in the non-dual, so that's one thing you pointed out to me. That I was stuck in a phase where I was like, oh, I don't know anything. That's one of the. I think I'm gonna make a video just solely on like the sort of like the top 10, like people love those like top 10 videos, like the top non-dual dogma, top 10 ways to practice non-duality.
Yeah.
And then we just mentioned a bunch of them. One of them was thinking like the Anatta realization is the end, or thinking non-duality is the end is one of them. Another one is no concept. That's a big one. When I mention this to people, they're like, holy shit, right, I'm verifying having no concept. I'm conceptualizing about having no concept. And I'm thinking about having no thoughts. And that really stopped a lot of people's progress in terms of like refining the views or understanding how your mind is verifying certain partial views or whatever. But even just like intellectual training is useful, right? For you as a human being, right?
Yeah, very useful.
Why didn't you get you never got stuck in that phase of like, oh, you can't know anything, I don't know anything, I shouldn't use my mind?
I think I got pretty lucky because like
Then
the
I think you
time,
got stuck in that phase.
you know, uh, all the things that I've done in my life, whether it's hobbies like photography, fitness. There's a phase where I was like surfing a lot, just whatever it was. I would always I would always fully throw myself into it, um, and so in that sense, I almost feel like when this all I mean, it's relative, right? But when this all started unfolding, happening, becoming the pillar of orienting my life around. That was basically when I joined you guys. So I kind of avoided falling too deeply into any one dogma or system or whatnot. Like the most helpful thing for me was ATR. But part of maybe what was also so helpful in not falling into any rigid thinking was like their manual is so hard to read. Like, yeah. So.
Yeah. And for me, I guess it has always been something very interesting to me. So I don't really have a problem of like for me, the intellectual part has never had to do with like suffering, because I do understand a lot of people suffer because of what they think inside their head. Yeah. So then they have to some sort of like want to eradicate that kind of mental activities, but I don't have that problem. I just have a problem with the pressure.
Right. And it turns out that you can think without thoughts and will without agency, as Chen puts it.
Yeah. And I like the thing about thinking without thoughts or reading with your third eye. It sounds like mystical or advanced or anything, but it's really a natural human capacity because
right. That's how you supposed to, right?
Yeah. For example, where like when you read works like novels by Haruki Murakami, it has very little emphasis on the actual intellectual or like the narrative flavors to it, but its own vibes.
It's all vibes. Yeah, all transmission. That's why people can connect to it so much. Yeah, but a lot of people a lot of really like a lot of serious. He said it himself. It's a lot of like serious like academics or serious like authors think like I'm just writing like pop junk.
Yeah,
I mean that's one view, But at the same time, he's like, why is it so popular? He's almost tapping into our subconscious mind, like that bypasses words and language.
Yeah, you're just not getting stuck on the words.
Or almost like for him, the words and what he's trying to describe, the vibe and the emotion and the scenery is one thing. It's almost non-dual. It's not like this. You translate that into something else, like an imagery or emotion. It's like one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing that. about too. He's like, you're separating concepts from like reality. Like you don't want to be doing like the quote unquote thing too much, Frank. He's like, you always do like quote unquote. You want to mean exactly what you mean and still be sort of like indistinguishable from that which you're pointing to.
Yeah.
Like a non-dual way of describing things.
Yeah. It's like one strike only. Don't like strike it and then try to not strike it at the same time. Just strike.
No, that's the concept or like quote unquote this, but I don't really mean that. I'm actually talking about something that's beyond concepts. But the way Chen talks is just like the word is the transmission.
Yeah.
So I think we. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say, speaking of that, maybe we can talk about how we met Chen and stuff.
It's
for you guys.
It's very interesting conversation. Yeah, but like I guess it also relates to my path. So after that lineage in Australia that I got connected to, I started to officially working with Frank, and we started to the first cohort, and then I started to have like cessations and training more and more, and to a point that I come back to Australia to propose to my girlfriend at the time. And I was also reading Shoe Dog in that trip.
Oh, okay.
That was when I buy the books and I read Shoe Dogs in my proposal vacation. But I was, once again, extremely depressed. And at this time, I was like, okay, this is very interesting. Because by that time, I have certain level of yogic capacity. I understand some things. I'm applying all the stuff that we are showing in Bootcamp at the time, which is like body scanning, self-inquiry, and letting go meditation. So what is causing all this angst again? And I just started to accept it. I'm like, okay, so let's just investigate. And I had to investigate. And then at that time, we was slowly also incorporating a lot of TWIM methodology, so opening up and bringing loving kindness to us. And I was seeing how actually there was a deep, deep resentment I have towards life, like just a lot of unprocessed sense of grief, like sense of like losing something precious or feeling slighted or feeling like a victim or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Now looking back, it was like, oh, okay. But at the time, processing that was a lot. And it was very precious because I have all the conditioning coming up at precisely the point that I'm supposed to be happiest. My girlfriend agreeing to marry me, having a dream vacation, working with Frank, earning a living from like work that I truly care about, all that. So I see like, oh, okay. So the emotion would just rolls on like this. So, okay, whatever comes there. So after that, it was a series of bliss from that acceptance. It's very similar to like that kind of I am territory I have when I'm 17. From that kind of like also a lot of angst and then feeling to it of like, like an understanding comes. So then it was like 24/7 bliss after that for about a few months, to the point that it was so like the entire structure relaxed so much that then it was like, oh, I'm not proliferating inside my head anymore. Like that thought doesn't loop back and trying to tangle itself much more. So then it reached a certain criticality that I just look at whatever and then I can pin the subject over there or over here, and like doing those kind of perceptual kind of gymnastic that is very popular nowadays. I was just trying to trick it myself. And then at that time, I was like going to ATR as well and starting to like read comments, checking this out, checking that out, those kind of things, and starting talking to more people. And they starting to point me out to like Nagarjuna's work, Thich Nhat Hanh's work, a lot of masters. And then I finally accepted that, okay, maybe I should look into traditions again from the Buddha Dharma side, because previously the tradition was everywhere else but Buddha Dharma. So then as soon as I did that, I read Nagarjuna's work through Thich Nhat Hanh's commentary.
Cracking the water. Yeah, cracking the water.
Cracking the water. The realization just dawns, really. It was not that, I would say that actually a lot of the energetic stuff go before that shift. So after that, it was actually a lot of calming down. Like it was especially, it was extremely bombastic for about 2 days, to the point that like driving becomes like a little bit unstable because it was so fresh. Everything was so like vibrant and shifting in and out, that I'm getting used to it. But as soon as I make my prostration and take refuge in Avalokitesvara, like Guan Yin, the Bodhisattva, we just peace immediately and composed and starting to open up. And at that time, it was also starting to, Frank was giving me suggestion to check out Vajrayana. It started with Evolving Ground, with the work of Charlie and Jared, and then opens up to like reading about wisdom eccentric, knowing about the Nyingma traditions, knowing about Papa Sambhava, Guru Rinpoche, and then after that, quickly a series of, okay, Frank, let's look into some teachers. And I was doing that with Lama Lina and then with Lama Joe, and trying to attend their classes and everything like that. So it really changes when at June or in May, we mentioned Albert, but I talked to Albert and I understand that, oh, he's someone who's went all in, even in regard to like moving to a place, living with his teacher and something like that. I was like, and he does that after Anatta.
Yeah, he's a baker. The first thing that Khan told me about Albert is like he has a teacher, and then they live in Michigan, and then the teacher told him to be a baker, and he's not a baker. That's his training right now. I was like, that's pretty fascinating. And then like a concept now, the reason why I was like, holy shit, is because that's after Anatta. Now, why is this listening to a teacher who told him to become a baker, dropping everything else, even after what thought to be the end? Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah. So it was very interesting. So we were trying to like know more of the territory that's not very commonly mapped out by modern efforts.
Yeah, you can't really anywhere, right? It's hard. And,
It's almost like we gotta like pass the vibe checks to even enter this kind of conversation, because if we don't pass the vibe checks, they wouldn't tell us shit. It's like, oh, okay, nice. Like you go over there, we'll talk. We'll talk like casually and like we'll be very nice to each other, but I don't disclose my secrets to you if you don't pass the vibe checks. So it's that kind of dynamic, because they have no responsibility to share private information that potentially can disrupt their own. So they don't do that.
Yeah. Also, it could be potentially dangerous for people who
for you to receive it if you're not ready.
Yeah.
Or to misconstrue information, or try to slice it, dice it, and put it into boxes, and then create a whole bunch of problems. But precisely by that, I was very, very interested in Albert's decision, and then I was reading a lot into it, and at that time, Albert understand that I'm doing CC with Frank, and we were about to launch the third cohort, which Taylor joins at that point. He says that, hey, since you're doing this CC thing and you own about like collecting different flavors of realization, how about you talk to Chang? And at that time, I was already know of Chang, and it was quite a ferocious kind of reputation. Like he's intense. That's my first impression of him. So I was like, okay. I was a little bit nervous of doing that. So I was like talking to Chang, and he was just to text at first. He was surprisingly very friendly. Seems like a very like a friend kind of archetype, not really like a teacher above kind of way of responding. So it was that kind of first impression. And I talked
keep going.
With
I need to
Frank
plug
about,
this in.
hey, you wanna join and meet with this guy?
I think you froze.
That supposedly that he's also very, very realized. Like we don't really know the extent of his realization at the time, but he's very realized. Then we hop on a call between me, Frank, and Chang, and we just talk, and then make a very interesting impression. But after that, I talked with Chang again, and again. So to a certain point, that and to be very honest, with this CC, every single time that we launch a bootcamp, we honestly think is the best thing ever that we ever done, to the greatest extent of ability. But by the third bootcamp, because I'm trying to like break open this new territory, of that is not commonly spoken about in popular Dharma. So I was really at my edge of trying to balance relaying all that information for us, and also like continue my studying, and also continue my training, all of that. So I was at my edge. So I was very, very close to giving up for now. So, quitting. I was just like, okay, for now, I need to quit building CC so that I can focus on training. Otherwise, it would just not work. So right at that point, like within 24 hours of me like going on a call with Frank and like explaining my situation of like, hey, I can't do this. It's just too much. We need to reprioritize and probably like regroup in a few years when we know more of this. Chang say, hey, I have an idea of how we can work together. Would you like to check it out? I was like, okay, let's work it out. And then he mentioned all the solution to all the. What's that? You're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Frank.
Sorry, my internet got disconnected. Oh, I was gonna say I don't think you ever had that conversation with me. You were going to, right? But then before you had that official conversation, you say I'm gonna.
I was going to.
Chen like messaged you and said we can work together or something like that.
Intercept. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So instead, that conversation within 24 hours switched from, hey Frank, I'm gonna quit, to, hey Frank, let's build CC in collaboration with this teacher. Within 24 hours, I'm like, okay, let's give it a chance. And that's the origination of the fourth bootcamp.